to Transformative Principle, where I help you stop putting out fires and start leading. I'm your host, Jethro Jones. You can follow me on Twitter at Jethro Jones. Welcome to Transformative Principle. I'm your host, Jethro Jones. You can find me on all the socials at Jethro Jones. So excited to have my good friends, Danny Bauer and Glenn Robbins, on the show today. They are the authors of the book, Calm in the Chaos, a school leadership approach to Stoicism, which is really a fantastic book. Definitely worth reading. Go check it out. Glenn, what's your big takeaway from our conversation today?
I think our big takeaway is three great individuals having a conversation about leadership and the fact that as a leader, you're to remain humble.
Excellent. Danny, what's your big takeaway?
Obviously, we talked about the content in the book, and that's valuable for your listener. But I didn't expect to have a robust conversation about the environment we create as school leaders and sometimes unintended consequences.
Yes, very good. Well, I'm going to say the thing that I find really valuable is our impromptu conversation about the world's worst sign that was hanging up in a school, telling kids what they can and can't control. So stay tuned for that. So who are these guys? Well, if you don't know them, you're in for a treat. Danny Bauer helps ruckus makers do school different, which means shifting from old, traditional, and often broken ways of educating to new, different, and innovative ways of educating. He's written multiple best-selling books, and he hosts the Better Leaders, Better Schools podcast, which is the most downloaded show in school leadership and ranks in the top 0.5% of all shows worldwide. That's right up there by Joe Rogan, by the way, just for comparison's sake.
Just next to him.
Just next to him. Glenn Robbins is the superintendent of Brigantine Public Schools in Brigantine, New Jersey, and his passion is harnessing a district culture that thrives on positive psychology, design thinking, futurism, innovative digital spaces, technology integration, esports, cybersecurity, social emotional learning, Zen dens, and maker cultures. As if that wasn't enough, Glenn also encourages all students to have a voice not only in building a school culture, but also in designing student-led entrepreneur opportunities. And I've had both of these guys on the show before. You can get links to their interviews in the show notes at transformativeprinciple.org. As I said, I love these two men. They're amazing. They've been an inspiration to me for literally years. So we will get to my interview. Years. We'll get to our interview here in just a moment. Glenn, you became superintendent during the pandemic, and you had to get everybody together on the team. Can you talk to us about how to get people on the team when you're not all on the same island?
You did not know me. And, it was also an invitation. So while we were on an island, we had to make the phone calls. We had to reach out by emails to get all these lead people in the community to come join us. So that was obviously extending ourselves out there. And then when we brought them all into the room, they're all expecting to see who or what, So it's an interesting question in regards to who is going to lead the conversation. And I think that's the beauty of where I am. Everybody was there for all the right reasons, having those conversations for the betterment of the kids and the families. So, we also looked at it like this. This community had been hit before by a horrendous hurricane. So they had to come together before, so it was similar to that. So I used that exercise, say, you've been through something like this before. What worked, what didn't work? How can we get better at this? And how can we come together as one? So I really didn't look at it as much as like we were stuck on an island together. I looked at it like we were all common human beings for the decency and the good-heartedness of our families and our community. We were the ones that were selected or asked to help lead. And what a better time to get together and push our egos aside and say, how can we do this together? So I think it's just conversation, right? That's one of the key aspects of leadership is starting with conversations and then building relationships from them.
Yeah, and Danny, if you wouldn't mind jumping in on this piece of it, how do you get those conversations to happen when people aren't typically, or maybe in the past haven't seen themselves on the same page or seen themselves on the same team? How do you start to build that when there may be some resistance to it?
I was writing about this the other day, so thanks for asking, Jethro. And I think part of it, if people have criticisms or having difficulty connecting, that kind of thing, actually have gratitude about it instead of being frustrated, right? Because if you're starting from a place of frustration, scarcity, just any type of negative emotions, maybe taking it personally. Why aren't they listening? I'm the leader. I've got the title, got the fancy suit, all this kind of stuff. But if you come from a place of gratitude, and let's say people have a challenge or a criticism, use that as the opportunity, right? We wrote a book, Calm in the Chaos, on Stoicism, but we're not trying to, outshine Ryan Holiday. Like, he's the best at it. He really is. What Glenn and I tried to do is write a book about Stoicism in the context of school leadership. So what does Ryan have to do with this story I'm telling? He had a book called The Obstacle is the Way. And that's something that I've taught a number of leaders. We've read it, but just that concept and the idea that you could turn critics into cheerleaders and enemies into evangelists if you demonstrate gratitude and you take their concerns and challenges seriously, and then do some deep thinking about, well, how can I actually flip that around? This is now my roadmap for, in your case, in this question, connecting with people, or potentially if it's a school leader in a new project or initiative, this is the way in terms of professional development.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And when one of the things that I've learned is that resent it, when you resent what you're going through, then it becomes a challenge. When you recognize the sacrifice that it takes, when you recognize the hard work that has to go into it, then it becomes basically sanctified to your good. And as I've figured that out for myself, I've seen how these difficult things that have happened have really actually been beneficial. And that's one of the other things that you guys talk about a lot in from calm to calm, the calm and the chaos. Excuse me, tongue twister today.
That's all right.
That's one of the things that you guys talk.
I think I know why, though. If you want to hear about why your tongue is twisted.
Yes, please tell me.
Well, I had long hair, and then you had long hair, right?
Yes.
Now I got short hair, and I'm on the call. You got short hair. What is going on?
I know. I keep jumping back and forth. And here's the thing: when I shaved my head, my wife was like, "What have you done? Your hair was beautiful," and she was not very happy with it. And I was like, "Don't worry. In just a couple months, it'll be back." Yep. Yeah. And thankfully, I'm not one of those men where my hair is falling out and I'm going bald. Thankfully, that's not me, because if I did that and I shaved my head and it never grew back, that would be bad for everybody. Yeah. So thank you for injecting that. I think the other thing that you bring up there is that we all go through these struggles in leadership. You talk about some of your struggles in the book, and Glenn, you talk about some of yours. And when you are a principal or a superintendent, you are the target of a lot of criticism, harassment, also bad-natured, evil-seeking people trying to tear you down. Like, those things are real, and we rarely talk about those. First, why don't we talk about those? And then second, how do we start talking about that more often so we recognize that that's not as unusual as everybody makes it seem? Glenn, why don't you take that one first?
All right, Jethro, can you hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Sorry, I've been struggling with the Wi-Fi in this state
It's
that
all
I'm
good.
in right now. Anyway, I think it's the fear of power. I think it's the fear of showing that you're not strong enough to be a leader. I think it's the imposter syndrome. You don't want to share that, that you think you're not where you belong. I think about what the work Danny does and that you do, Jethro. You guys mentor leaders across the country for a reason. People are struggling, and those who are strong enough are the ones who are willing enough to admit it. So you're working with these individuals, trying to make them better and make them realize that they've made it to a certain point in their career. But now, you have to keep rising up. People will continue to look at you, but you're still a human being. Maybe I'm taking a little bit too much away from what Danny would be saying about this, but like I said, it could be an ego thing. It could be a pride thing. It could be a bunch of human emotions. But I think we need to talk about this. I think that's the joy that I have with having mentors across the country who help and walk me through multiple steps of things I've done multiple times and or haven't done yet. And having those courageous, intentional conversations has helped me a lot. You know, as our good friends, they write The Unfinished Leader, right? Out in the Chicagoland, Mike Lewifeld and Nick Polyak. And the unfinished leader is that you're always learning, you're always growing. And the second that your pride kicks in, and then you forget, or, to have an open mind. So, Danny, you want to jump in that more? Because this is more of your forte right here.
Well, before Danny jumps in, let me just say real quick that idea of as soon as you arrive at whatever point you think arrival is, there's a whole new game to play. There's a whole new level to learn. And so you may think you've got some things figured out, but there's just another level that you can explore. Go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, I think it's the posturing, right? That's a big piece. Posturing that you have it all together and that kind of thing. Glenn already mentioned the imposter syndrome. Hard for guys specifically, but hard for leaders generally, because we don't have a lot of great models showing us, right, the vulnerability, the authenticity it takes to say, hey, it's tough. It's tough out here. So it's not the norm. That's why I think a ruckus maker who wants to do school different shows up in a different way, right? And a key piece to that is having those coaches, mentors, having that modeling, but having psychologically safe spaces where you can admit where it's hard, right? And all the stuff that goes around that. Glenn is way more the Stoic expert than I am, because watch, he's going to prove it in just a second. I'm going to set him up, but it's certainly an interest of mine too. I just don't have all the. He's like the walking Stoic encyclopedia, which is fun. So check this out. There's a quote that Marcus Aurelius talks about in terms of the type of people to expect, right? So I could go search through our book, Glenn, to find it. But I feel like you know what that quote is. And if I caught you off guard, my apologies. I can go search for the quote. But the gist is, as Glenn shares it, the gist is like, expect people to be tough and scoundrels and rotten and all this kind of stuff. But Glenn, do you have that one queued up, or did I put you on the spot? My bad.
No, buddy, you didn't. And this is something I have to share with a lot of my leaders that I work with, part of my team, and as far as leaders across the country. You're right, it is Marcus Aurelius, and I'm going to somewhat paraphrase it, but you're going to wake up every single morning with egotistical, envious, angry people who, unfortunately don't know good or bad. It's just how they were born and raised, how they're brought up. They don't know and understand the full complexity of what they may be saying. But to Danny's point, you're going to deal with them each and every day. And all you can do is greet them with kindness. And all you can do is greet them with what you can control. So here it is. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surely they are like this because they can't tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugly of evil, and recognize that the wrongdoer has nature related to my own, not the same blood and birth, but the same mind possessing the shared divine. So basically meaning that we're all human, but unfortunately, like I said, you're going to wake up and you're going to meet these dishonest, jealous people, like you mentioned, Jethro, and it does happen across any particular field when it comes to leadership. There are people who are trying to get to the top for all the right reasons or wrong reasons, and the way they go about it sometimes, does hurt a lot of people. I think Danny talked about there's no real models to it to build, for invulnerability. Think about this for a second. If I were to say I was vulnerable, and I was, very scared of what I was doing as a leader, how does that portray to my school board? How does that portray to my community? How does that portray to my staff and to the kids? So it can be perceived in many different ways. Some would say, oh, this person is genuine and humility is there to help him. Others might look at it and say, how in the world is this person leading our school district or part of a leader in our community? So I think that's some part of the leadership that you have to understand. Everything you do is going to proceed in one way or another, and you can only control what you can control. And as I tell everybody all the time, greet them with kindness, no matter who they are, what they are, where they're from. Always greet them with kindness, because that's who you are. That's a reflection of who you are and who you think the world should see you. You can control what the other person is going to do back to you.
Yeah, one of the things that I've coached on many times and been coached myself on is that there's always going to be a third of the people that you lead that totally love you, a third of the people that hate your guts, and a third of the people who honestly don't even know that you're their leader. and and if you just recognize that those some variant of those three things are going to exist, you're going to be in a much better position because you're not going to be expecting something when it's not there. The other piece I want to touch on is this piece of vulnerability. And sometimes vulnerability looks like weakness. And in my mind, what Stoicism really means, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, it means that you are constant and that you are able, we go through these highs and lows in life, and the Stoic stays constant through them, doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, and is able to just maintain who they are and be focused on what matters to them. What's your response to that summary of Stoicism as a whole?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and that I think this is my favorite quote. I know Glenn has it up in his house in New Jersey, but Marcus said to be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it. So that's the thing with Stoicism. It's similar actually in mindfulness. It's interesting how there's some similarities there. But a lot of the pain and the suffering and challenges of leadership is expecting the sea to not rage. That's not reality. The sea rages. School leadership is going to be hard. And that other Marcus quote, again, it's about having realistic expectations, right? You're going to come across people that are tough too. And so all of this, I think it's a lot about accepting reality as it is instead of trying to change it because that's out of your control. And Stoicism is really about mastering what's in your control, which, here, it's really just you and how you respond in the moment. So if you want to suffer less as a school leader and adopt Stoicism, for example, just stop thinking that it's not going to be tough. Wow. If you release yourself from that, imagine it's going to be hard. Every day is going to be hard. But guess what? Pretty much everything else is. There's no other grass is greener type of thing, but that's the trap. That's the trap that a lot of people fall into. And once you accept that, like I said, the freedom to accept things the way they are, now you can really start doing some cool stuff in your life, leadership, and on your campus because you have the proper mindset. So is that helpful, Jethro?
Yeah, it absolutely is, because if you expect things to be tough, then they're going to be. If you expect things to not be tough, then you're going to be disappointed because things are going to be tough, right?
Yeah. And I got one more thing I want to add too. And Glenn, I don't know if there's anything you want to say, but I will share that, a common misconception of Stoicism is that you sort of push everything down, right? Like the Stoic face, that's where we get it, that you push your emotions down, that you don't feel. And that's not the case at all, right? So you still have the range of emotions, and there's going to be high highs and low lows, right? And everything in between. But those emotions, you don't get hooked like a fish, right? And you're not pulled around by those emotions. You're just, again, able to accept reality as it is.
Yeah.
So I'll add to that. Danny set this up perfectly. Um,
Thank you.
one of my favorite memes is where there's a guy with a mop on the beach, and he's trying to clean up the waves. You guys seen that?
Yeah.
So
No,
that's like the
no, that's
leadership
funny
right
though.
there. So,
Yeah.
all right, so it's a guy with the mop, and he's trying to clean up the waves as it's crashing all around him, and he's trying to clean it up. So, you as a leader can't stop those waves from coming. You have to learn how to deal with that. It's the old surfer expression: you can't stop the waves, learn how to surf them. But I'll give you a little tidbit out of the book. On page 50. Deep breath, bite your tongue. How many times you wish you had followed this instead of making an emotional decision that you immediately regretted? In these moments, it's easy to see how anger is punishment you give to yourself for someone else's mistakes. And being a public official creates plenty of opportunities to get angry. For instance, critics, trolls, haters, and just about everyone else in the world are likely to blame or slander you just simply because they feel it's their duty to do so. You may represent a system they resent or the rules they despise. You may have made a decision or enforced consequences that they feel they were personally attacked. Maybe there was no reason at all. Regardless, it's not about you, it's about them. The same people who wrote on the bathroom stalls are now writing on the internet. So you can't control what people are going to do. So like Danny said, there's waves you're going to come at you, but you can't punch the waves. What good is that going to do? You can't be the guy at the mop and try to clean up the waves. What good is that going to do? So to Danny's point, you can't be totally stoic and just not, have no motion at all. You have to have the ability to take it out, whether it's going for a run or a walk or whatever it may be. You have to ground yourself. But, getting angry at the wave, getting angry at people doesn't you no good.
So I want to share a picture of a sign in a school that my 16-year-old daughter saw. And I think this is so pertinent to our conversation. And we put stuff up in schools, sometimes not even thinking about the message that we're sending. And I'm going to read you what they say on the I can control. And if you're listening, I'll read it because you won't be able to see it. So it says, I can control my thoughts, my hands, my actions, my decisions, my words. Makes sense, right? We can get behind that. Well, here's the amazing thing. It also says under the what I can't control what others think. That's true. But then it says I can't control my reactions, my boundaries, my attitude, or what I eat. Now,
they were using ChatGPT 1 on that. That was a sign made by AI, and it was hallucinating, and it just messed up. That's a very bad sign.
Very bad.
What's it was intentionally built in for Jethro to have conversations with his children at home.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Email me the principals. I need to. Can we call? Did you address it? Let me call if you haven't talked to them.
Yeah.
I could be good. We could go in good cop, bad cop.
No kidding.
That sign sucks.
It is terrible. And my daughter, who's 16, saw this and said, I don't think this is right, but it's up in a school. So therefore, there must be some wisdom in it. Well, no, I don't think that's the case at all. I think, like you said, either there
is wisdom.
Yeah. They either use
here's the wisdom.
Let's hear it.
Sorry, I'm cutting you off.
That's
they either
okay.
use ChatGPT. Finish your thought, and then I'll do my zinger.
They either did use ChatGPT or some kid made this and didn't think about what it was that they were putting on there, and a teacher approved it without having the conversation, and now it's hanging up. Giving other people this message. Go ahead.
Another point of view might be, maybe, let's assume positive intent here. This is a reach. They're teaching critical thinking and that you can't believe everything you read.
Yeah.
Because that sign is so terrible. And, why did they go there with the eating? That's fine. But a lot of it has to do with, thinking and maybe because it's a decision, but yes, you can control what you eat. I choose everything I eat every day.
Yeah. So the reason why I share this is because some people, I believe, do actually think that they can't control some of the things that we believe you can control. And some people think that they can't control their reactions, that they can't control their attitude. Some principals out there may be listening to this saying, well, I can't control how I feel about this because people are out to get me, or they think that I'm terrible, or whatever else is going on. How do you help someone see what they can control, or how do you help someone see that they can control things they don't think they can control?
That's a
Well,
great question.
go ahead, Glenn.
I think, in all honesty, Danny and Jethro, I think look at the world around us, right? We've allowed this. We've allowed this on social media. We allow people to show their anger. You know, how many memes have been made off of that? We allow that it's okay to voice how displeased you are in an irate, irrational manner. I think there's some serious conversations that need to be happening, not just at the lower level, but at the political level, at the top levels. We see our political leaders doing this. You know, that's the scary thing. Instead of people working together and say, "Hey, you control you." You know, it's the old saying, "Sticks and stones might break my bones," you know, but words will never hurt me. We know words hurt, and they do cut and pierce a lot of different things. But you know, once again, I think it's all about the audience that we keep putting it out there to, that it's acceptable. And I don't think it is. I don't think it is acceptable, especially for young children. You're teaching them that they have to be responsible for their own boundaries. Sort of like driving a car. You get in an accident, you are responsible for your car. Sorry, officer, it's that guy's fault for this reason. Well, you're the guy that crashed into him. No, it's the other guy's fault. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a conversation to be had there. I think it's more of a societal piece, and I think there's a lot been missing in the last couple of years, that people could look inward instead of outwards. It is so easy, and that's part of your book. You talked about the leadership, Jethro, about how it's easy to point the finger at somebody else. Whatever happened to taking responsibility? You are responsible for your actions. You are responsible for what you're putting in your mouth and eating. You're responsible for your distance between somebody else and yourself. You have the responsibility. So for that poster, I hope it's a writing prompt, you know, prompted to
Yeah.
write against it. But if it's not, I think that's the other thing we need to think about. Forget all the pretty Pinterest and social media thing. And how are you intentionally building your classroom? How are you intentionally building your school? How are you intentionally building your district? Everything you say and do put up is going to be polarized. You know, and there has to be intentionality behind it. And when you're a classroom teacher, you set up your room for a reason and how you wanted it to be done. And it welcomed people or it scared people before they walked in the room. Same thing with the district, same thing with the school. So if you're the principal, I think you have to have pretty intense conversations with your leadership team and your teachers saying, what is the message we're trying to send here? Are we trying to raise young, responsible individuals who are accepting responsibility for themselves and changing the world for the better with compassion and empathy and trying to understand that? Or is it a me only world? And let's just focus on test scores and things that look pretty on a classroom because of Pinterest. So sorry to go on a little bit of a tangent there. I'm trying to keep it together, but we have to 100% of your responsibility is on you. You know, you control you.
Yeah.
Well, it's good.
What
I saw on the sign too, well, the last thing is that, you know, it said what other think. It doesn't say what others think. It says what other think.
I know.
So that, but back to the, you know, what can you, it's tough. And I think that's why like coaching mentorship really matters. That's where like Jim Rohn stuff, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with matters. That's where Glenn's talking about, you know, the media you choose, because you have a choice there. It's within your control what you decide to consume, who your mentors, who your heroes are. You know, Glenn mentioned politics. We won't name anybody specifically, but the point is, like, if you're more progressive or more conservative, that doesn't matter. There's people that you adore and potentially on either side. And there's anti-examples, anti-heroes as well, which is a stoic viewpoint, right? And so what can you learn from people presenting in a way that doesn't align, you know, with your values and that kind of thing? You know, but it's a really hard question that you asked, Jethro, and something I subscribe to is you can't convince or I choose, this is a choice I have. I don't want to convince the unwilling, right? And so I spend my time and energy on people, just like you mentioned, the splitting up the staff. You got your supporters, you got your people in the middle, you got your people who are sort of working against what you're trying to do. And I choose to spend my time and energy with people who either already get it or are open to it versus people that are closed off, right? Somebody says, "Nah, I'm not a ruckus maker." God bless them. Good luck, right? Maintain the status quo. I hope you enjoy that in the traditional way of schooling. But if you want to get creative, if you want to look at a different way of doing things, then let's have that conversation. And it's the same thing with what's in your control. If people excuse, I don't want to hang out with victims, right? I want to hang out with like people who demonstrate agency and ownership, right? So it's all about the type of game that you're playing as well.
Well, and people are going to say, well, Danny, that's good for you. You get to choose who you work with. I don't get to choose who I work with because I'm in this school or district. And the answer is the same, though. You don't have to give
Still,
your energy to the negative
right.
people that you don't want to associate with. And yes, you may still have to work with them, but that doesn't mean that they need to consume your thoughts. That doesn't mean that everything they say needs to be treated with like, I better respond to this. No, some people are just trolls on social media, in faculty meeting. I had the many times throughout my career, I had teachers who would raise their hand to quote unquote, just ask questions. And I would say, thanks for your question. Let's talk about that later. And I'd move on. And their whole intent with asking that question was to derail what we were trying to do and get us off topic. And I remember one year, we were doing this vision and norms activity that I had planned to take like 2 hours. And these teachers kept making it go on and on and on. And it ended up taking 6 hours the entire day and blew off all the rest of the schedule. But because I was trying to establish norms, I thought, well, I need to give them the opportunity to say, I didn't realize what they were doing at the time. Later I did. And I was able to say, look, if you want to talk with me one-on-one about that, that's fine. But you're not going to take over this whole entire everybody else's time to get on your soapbox and complain about this. Come complain to me one-on-one. I'll give you 30 minutes and let you complain all you want. And then I'll close the door and forget the conversation ever happened, because you're not here to work together. You're here to put up roadblocks. And I'm just not going to stand for that.
Good point. Appreciate your vulnerability there, sharing a lesson you learned.
Yeah, that week sucked, by the way. Just saying.
Sounds like it.
All right, last question. There's a lot of great advice in the book, Calm in the Chaos. There's a lot of powerful statements, quotes, stories, exercises to go through. I want you to narrow it down into one thing that you would say that principals need to do this week to start making some changes in their life. What would that one thing be to be a transformative principal like you two? Danny, you first, and then Glenn.
Me first. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffro.
I'm going to, two quick sort of ideas. One, the idea of just owning your mistakes, right? If you want to make changes, start being just real with where you're messing up, because nothing can erode trust faster than a leader who thinks his doesn't stink and seems like unaware of these. You think your people don't notice, they notice, right? And it's okay to make mistakes, but you need to own them, let people know, and also talk about like what you hope to do differently next time. So that'd be something. And another quick thing I just want to add here is that pick up the book, buy Calm in the Chaos. We're very proud of what we put together. It released and hit the bestseller list on Amazon within the first week, which was awesome. Mike Lebelfeld, I think Glenn talked about earlier, he mentioned this is going to be a desk reference for every school leader everywhere. And, we hope that becomes true. And here's why. Again, Stoicism, the philosophy, embedded in the context of school leadership with real stories, real case studies. And we designed this book to be super practical. It's under 100 pages. You could read it quickly. and also not cutting out the depth. And there's all these questions that you can ask your leadership team. How would you handle this situation? And so it really lends itself to be a great leadership team read. And that's how we designed it. Over to you, Glenn.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. Great points about that. I love the owning up, and because your staff's watching you make mistakes all the time, so own that. But I think it's also, have you created a space where the psychological safety is there for your staff to do the same thing? They can try new things, or are they petrified of making a mistake that they cannot do that? And I think that's the one thing about leadership. If you're doing it right, your staff can feel the safety of knowing that they can fail but not be a failure. I think that means a lot to them when they can try new lesson plans and engaging students in different ways and engaging community in different ways. And the last part, find mentors, have those conversations. Like Danny said, pick up this book and say, hey, here's one of the questions. There's 3 questions about this situation. How in the world did you deal with this? Because that's what some of the conversations that I picked up from Danny, with some people who have read our book. They're like, they're cliffhangers. How did you deal with this? So, and then we dove into those conversations a little bit deeper, and it made them feel better and myself feel better, and said, all right, what could we have done differently? So I think it's the conversations, continuing to have those conversations with other leaders and continuing to try to rise up. Because ultimately your goal as a leader is to serve. They are not serving you. Your job is to serve all those around you, to make your teachers better, to make your kids better, make your community better. That's your job. You're there for them. You don't wear the crown. The crown is to be put down, and you do the hard work with them each and every day. How can I help you get better? How can I help our kids get better? So, and I think that comes from working together with others, and having those conversations about how they've done it. So, great point, Danny, and thank you, Jethro, for a great question.
Yeah, thank you both for being here. Appreciate it. Once again, Calm the Chaos, available on Amazon, probably the easiest place to get it. By the way, on Kindle Unlimited, so if you're doing that, it won't even cost you anything. So go get it, read it.
Who knew?
I know.
Who
Amazing.
knew?
But like Michael Lubelfeld said, great book to have on your desk and in print. So thanks again. Links to that are in the show notes. Thank you both for being part of Transformative Principle today.
Thanks, Jethro.